I was a red diaper grandbaby. Red diaper baby is a child of parents who were members of the United States Communist Party or were close to the party or sympathetic to its aims. My paternal grandparents met at a Communist Party meeting on my grandmother's 18th birthday. My grandfather was arrested twice during the McCarthy era. After my father was born, my grandparents left the party and worked with some other radical working class Brooklyn folks from the projects to start a community organization that still exists today. It's called the Center. My father was raised in the Center, and so was I. They were involved in the civil rights movement and the feminist movement, as well as other activist activities. My mother and her two brothers grew up in the projects in the Bronx with an Argentinian immigrant father and a second-generation Jewish American mother. When my mother was in her late teens, she became involved with the anti-Vietnam War effort and found her way to the Center where she met my dad. They were both first-generation college students, and after college, they went to different schools in the Midwest for their MSWs. When I was 2, my father decided to go back to school for his PhD. To make this work and to be closer to the Center, we moved into my grandparents' house in East New York in Brooklyn. The public housing projects and low-income private housing of East New York were developed after World War II for the families of low-income veterans. By the time I lived there, it was very poor and almost entirely African-American. The Latinos depicted here did not live in the neighborhood until after my family left. It was a dangerous place for everyone, and my whiteness simultaneously protected me and made me a target.
Isn't all that great. My automobile is a piece of crap. My fashion sense is a little whack, and my friends are just as cruel as me. I didn't go to boarding schools. Preppy girls never looked at me. Why should they? I ain't nobody got nothing in my pocket.
My parents made a conscious decision to sacrifice my academic learning for the opportunity to teach me how to be with people who were different from me and do the work of social change.
We were living in a community and we were limited by our income, but we were also guided by a view of the world where social change and a more equal or just society was only going to come when people could work across difference. And so we deliberately lived in a community where there was diversity, and you would get experiences with many people different from you and become competent.
The Center had a child care program that I attended all day from when I was 3 through kindergarten, and then after school 5 days a week while I was at PS 273. It also had a camp upstate, which I attended with my family for work weekends throughout my childhood, for a week with my Learning Center group when I was 3 through 5, for 6 weeks as a camper when I was 6 years old, and for 9 weeks every summer from when I was 7 through when I was 16, at which point it shut down. Most of the kids there were Black, and I was usually the only white kid in my group. Most of the white kids were the kids of the leadership, like me, and which was mostly, but not entirely white. We did a lot of physical labor at camp and in the Center to teach us how to live and work with people who were different from us. And because communists tend to glorify labor, and because there was a lot of work to do and there was no one else to do it, we also learned about the social justice movements of the past and present, including the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the labor movement, the anti-apartheid movement, and challenges that the Irish Americans and Italian Americans faced when they arrived in the US. We didn't just learn about those things, though. We participated in them. We boycotted and we marched, and we learned folk dances and folk songs, union songs, Black spirituals, and so much more.
We wanted both of you to give leadership to other people in creating a more just world.
We needed to find a job for your father. We needed to get out. We needed to leave. And in order to leave and to move, and that was absolutely essential.
This is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School. I went here for just 1 year, 4th grade. When I got here, I was 2 years behind in math, and I failed my first couple of spelling tests because I didn't understand the Rhode Island accent. I was able to catch up with both, but before that happened, I was placed in a class that was primarily white, although the school was 75% people of color, children of color. I was in the advanced class, I assume, because I was white, because I clearly wasn't advanced since I was so far behind. This is Nathan Bishop Middle School. I went here for 4 years. The school was about a third white, about a third Southeast Asian, and about a third African American, Cape Verdean, Native American folks of various mixtures there. This school was my neighborhood middle school, but there was also a magnet middle school for gifted kids, which my parents would not let me go to because they thought that it was too elitist, and it was a way for Providence to keep white kids in the public school system. It sucked white kids out of all the neighborhoods and put them in this one area so that they didn't just go to private school. But my parents wouldn't let me do that because they wanted me to be with people who were different from me, and so I went here to Nathan Bishop. A couple of years after I graduated, my family sued this school in a case that eventually went to the Supreme Court, but that's a whole other story. This is Classical High School, the college prep public high school for the city of Providence. It was my first time being allowed to go to a primarily white school. I'm not exactly sure why my parents allowed it, but I think they thought I got it by then and that I could handle it. It turned out they were wrong. I couldn't handle it, and I only lasted 2 years here. This is the Alternate Learning Project, or ALP. It had shut down about 10 years after I graduated. I went here for 2 years. I was so unhappy at Classical that I started talking to other kids around the city and asking them about alternatives. And somebody said, you should try to go to ALP. And so I took the bus up here when I was about 15. I took the bus here and I walked in and I asked them about transferring to ALP, and they told me I had to take this test. And so I took the test and I passed the test and I brought it home to my parents. And I gave a whole presentation to my parents about why I wanted to come to ALP, and they let me come and they let me transfer to ALP. ALP was about 20% white and the rest of the school wasn't white. ALP ran on a quarter system. So that meant that if you failed a quarter of a class, you didn't lose the whole year. So it was a big draw for kids who were pregnant or kids who had kids, because it meant that they didn't lose the whole year to their pregnancies. It was a school, you might tell from all the noise, it's not in the best neighborhood, it's in a low-income neighborhood of Providence, and it's pretty far from where I lived, and getting here each day was a lot of work, but I was motivated to come every day. I enjoyed the school. Within my first, I don't think my first quarter, but my second quarter here, I was elected to be vice president of student government, whereas I had been deemed a troublemaker at Classical. Here I was deemed a leader. I don't think I changed that much that quickly. I think I was just happier here. This was a better match for me. I loved ALP. It was small. There were only 160 kids, and in my graduating class of 60, 2 of us, including me, went on to college. I really think ALP had a big impact on who I became as a leader. I'm here by the $65 candles in Nordstrom at Providence Place Mall. Providence Place Mall opened I don't know when, but when I was in college at the University of Rhode Island, the old Providence campus was here in this spot. They knocked that building down to build this mall. And so I only took 1 class at the Providence campus, but I didn't want to drive all the way down to the main campus in Kingston. So here we are in Providence Place Mall, the former site of the Providence campus of URI. URI was my first successful experience being at a majority white institution. That was the most important lesson I learned at URI, was how to be around majority white folks, and I was successful in a way that I absolutely wasn't at Classical. I stayed for the whole 4 years and completed my degree at URI. I studied anthropology with a minor in history. I also studied abroad. I went on semester at sea, and I traveled around the world and visited 10 countries in South America, Africa, and Asia, which began my global understanding of how all the pieces fit together. That was really helpful. As a student at URI, I was a student activist and a student leader. I ran an anti-racism organization and was involved with the environmental justice organization. I also was a founding member of the very first URI Gay Lesbian Student Association, and really felt that I did have an impact at URI, and certainly URI had an impact on me. I attended American University in Washington, D.C., where I got my MA in Applied Cultural Anthropology. I remained committed to both academic and activist work with urban minority relations and social justice. I did my research in Central Java, Indonesia, working with people who converted from the 95% majority Muslim population to the small oppressed Christian religious group as a form of resistance. It is not a coincidence that I chose Codell with its social justice focus to conclude my academic education. My education in being a leader for social change will not end here and will be lifelong.